Well, good morning, folks, and welcome back to another toasty, warm, beautiful morning. We spent last night in the camper again, which was actually quite nice. It was a lot a lot cooler than it was in the house. The house this morning is still like 31 degrees in the house, which is a lot to deal with overnight. The chickens, as you can tell, are ready for some breakfast. So we'll grab them a bucket of grain, and then we'll get on with our day. Well, it looks like the chickens are all happy with their breakfast, so that's good. Anyways, time to add some context. So we talked about it's been really hot and we've been sleeping in the camper. We reached a daytime high of 45 degrees Celsius the other day. So never in my lifetime have I experienced that here in northern Alberta. Now, we've gone places where it's been that hot, and there are places in the world where it's that hot all the time. But for our chickens, that's not normal. For us, that's not normal. And so we did put out a video the other day about keeping chickens cool during a heat wave. And because it reached 45 degrees and there was some birds that were heat stressed, we made a choice to actually process a few of those birds a couple of weeks early. They're on the lighter end, but again, didn't want to see them suffer. We only want them to have one bad day on the farm. And there were some comments about adding, frozen treats and bottles of ice water to their drinking water and changing it out multiple times a day. And so that's where I want to add some context. So we are 100% reliant on off-farm income. This is, to us, this is a lifestyle choice. This is, we make enough off of this so that it doesn't bankrupt us. But this isn't enough so we can quit our day job by any means. And so what that means is there's a 12-hour window there where we're not home. Well, in some cases it's longer than that. Sometimes it's 14 hours. So you work your full day, then you come home and you do all your work again. You work in the morning before you go to work. You work all day, and then work all night to get everything fed. So the whole concept around being sustainable with offering cool treats is something that doesn't work for us simply because we're not home all day. So that's the thing with a lot of our videos. Some people try to take it as we're preaching that as the gospel, and in fact that's not the case. Everything we're doing here is entirely dependent on our situation, our environment, and much of the stuff may work for other people, and if they want to use it, yeah, go right ahead. You know what, we'd be happy to see other people learn from what we're doing. But if they found something else that works well for them, I've got absolutely no issue. Do what's working for you, right? That's the main thing, is focus on what's happening in your situation on your farm with your breed of animals. Something as simple as having a single purpose laying hen as opposed to a dual purpose layer versus meat bird is going to change the context of how you manage your birds. Here we have both of them, so we have to kind of juggle a little bit of in between. Having wool sheep versus hair sheep. We have wool sheep. We're in northern Alberta, so it's always super cold, but in the summertime it's super hot. So, we've kind of got to find some of that balance. But there are people that successfully keep wool sheep here, and really don't want to get into an argument with them over, what's right and what's wrong. Honestly, I think we're all come to the table and bat and 10 every single time because we're on the same page. We're working towards the same goals: increase sustainability, feeding our own family, being good stewards of the land. That's what it's all about, not about nitpicking each other about how you manage your own farms. Anyway, with that said, just checking in on our mama hen and her 5 little chicks. She laid these out in the bush somewhere and hatched them out, I think underneath our grain shed. So that's pretty cool. Every year we have a couple. Get out of here, chicken. Every year we have a couple of hens that seem to sneak off and go find a way to make nature work, which is pretty cool. So we got dibs in the little chicken house. This is a dual purpose chicken house. It's in the spring it's a brooder. Later on in the year we just use it for extra space. And so we just moved our meat chickens out of here and onto the chicken tractors. What would that be, like 3 weeks ago, something like that? And so it works out perfect because we haven't reconverted it back into a mature chicken house. We're using the water. So here's my issue with the water. This is a standard vacuum style water. We wrapped heat trace around it, put some insulation around it. This is so we can keep it outdoors in the wintertime and not add to the humidity in the chicken house. But underneath all of that is just a regular vacuum style water. And my concern, and I'd be interested to see what other people use to make this kind of thing work, because they always turn around and they always poop right in the trough, and then you've just immediately got 5 gallons of contaminated water, or whatever your tank volume is, 3 gallons, 5 gallons, 10 gallons, whatever it is, right? They poop in there, now you got dirty water all day long. So then we've tried the horizontal and the vertical nipple waters in a 5 gallon bucket, and we found both of those to be somewhat unreliable. So the vertical nipples, the ones that come up and down, they still drip, right? You know, they take a little drip and they take a little sip, and a drip falls on the floor. And when they're outdoors, it's whatever, not a big issue, right? But if they drip more than they can, then you waste a lot of water. If they're inside the chicken house and it's dripping on the floor, well, then that's making a hot, stinking, messy mess. Not a good time for me, not a good time for the chickens. It's more work for everybody. So then the horizontal ones, they're spring loaded, they come out. We have one of those too in one of our chicken tractors. And again, they can leak a little bit, but about once a week we've had one of those spring loaded things. The spring has actually come out, popped out to the wrong side, and then it just allows water just to flow all day. Yeah, not good, because then you just drain your whole 5 gallon bucket in 2 hours, and your chickens could potentially be out of water for, well, we just talked about this, right? I'm away at work all day, so I mean, they could be out of water for 10 hours, and that's not cool either. So one of the chicken tractors has one of these, one of the chicken tractors has a horizontal nipple water, and the other chicken tractor has a vertical nipple water, and I hate all 3 of them. So I've been exploring the idea of the little cups. So it's still a 5 gallon pail, it's still horizontal, but it's a little cup. And so if anybody's using that, leave me a comment in the comment section. I'd be interested to know what kind of success you've had, because everything we're trying right now is either leaking or getting contaminated far too early, and ain't nobody got time for that. Anyways, I gotta negotiate my way through the rock garden here and get the water turned on for the chickens. So they have water buckets all day long, but we're gonna add flowing water. So remember, everything in context, right? Because we're away during the day, I want to add flowing water to them so they constantly have a cool drink to get, as opposed to that pail sitting in the sun when it's 38 degrees outside and heating up and heating up and heating up to the point where they probably don't want to drink it. Even the automatic water, so, or anything that we have the garden hose turned on to that goes to, you know, some kind of a dead end, like a float or something like that. We've noticed in the last few days, and we've reached that 40 some degrees, is that we're blowing up garden hoses. So at 50 psi, when that garden hose reaches 50 degrees or whatever, I don't know, whatever the sun beats down on it, and probably turns it to higher than 50 degrees, that hose gets compromised. Anyways, turns into a big water balloon, and then catastrophically fails. So then the water you think you have going to your chickens or your pigs or whomever is actually spilling out halfway across the lawn and not doing anybody any good. So we're just gonna leave the ends, just a nozzle on the end, open-ended, spritzing little mist in the air, and they can just go get a cool drink off the ground, right? And you know, so it's like the pigs or something like that, it's just pouring off and it's going into a container. The container's overflowing. So they've got cool, wet ground that they can muck around in and stay nice and refreshed. So these meat chickens here in the big carport chicken tractor, we had a cooling station set up there. You can see the kind of the white tub, and there was 2 white tubs, and the nozzle was on a mist, and just kind of in between them, we found that there was like 12 birds that are just stubborn as hell that would not leave the chicken tractor, and for whatever reason. So what we've actually done is we've actually taken the water nozzle and taken it inside. It overflows the bucket, and it still runs out. You can kind of see the wet spot on the ground there. It's still running out. So all the other chickens that are adventurous, they can come outside, can still get, you know, a cool place to dip their feet, to dip their beaks. And the dozen that just don't want to leave the confines of the chicken tractor, well, we don't have to worry about them being thirsty. The important thing to note with that, especially for those that are running off a water well like we are, is that we have a fantastic water well. We're blessed with that. It does like 25 gallons a minute. So it's a really good water well. So we can leave the water running, and it's just on a trickle. It's just enough to keep everything cool. But we can afford to leave the water run all day. Now, some people's water wells can't keep up to that, and they are gonna have to find alternate options. But this is what works for us. We found, again, if you just leave it on a float, access to water, we're gonna blow up hoses when it hits that, whatever it is in the States, I think it's like 100 Fahrenheit. Now, that's not every garden hose. We've got some garden hoses that are, I mean, it's like, they're not all built equal by any means. Some of our older, cheaper ones, that's where the quality is obviously lower, or the hoses have degraded over the years. The newer ones are keeping up good, but garden hoses aren't cheap, right? So not something you want to have to replace a whole bunch of the time. So you can just see this right here. We've just got this nozzle set up. Not a ton of water flowing through there, right? Just enough. It's flowing onto the ground, and the chickens will go in and get a drink. So here's what we had to do with the chicken tractors, a little bit less conventional what we're usually used to, because we usually just move them onto fresh grass every day. And we've had to slow our roll on that one. We've set up poultry netting in a larger run area, and we've propped the chicken tractors up on blocks so the chickens can get in and out. And because even though there's shade in there, there's not a ton of air movement in there, right? So we want them to be able to come out of the chicken tractor, go around the corner of the chicken tractor, catch a little bit of shade, maybe catch a bit of a breeze, and not be so impacted by the heat. Now, we did get a few comments here in the last few days that, you know what, in Arizona or in Texas or wherever, you know, southern states, that it's hot there all the time and they don't have to do any of this stuff and the birds manage just fine. Well, again, back to everything in context. You know what? Yeah, it's hot there all the time, and those birds are acclimated to that. You know, here we're going from 40 degrees on Monday to 20 degrees on Friday of this week. So that's a huge temperature swing. Last week we were at 18 degrees and we come up to, you know, this 40, you know, mid 40s during the heat of the day. And I'm certainly not acclimated to that. I would not expect the chickens to be acclimated to that. And so next week when everything cools down, yeah, we will more than likely pop the chicken tractors back down off the blocks and go back to moving them every day on the grass until it's processing day. If the temperature, the weather looks like it's gonna be sustainable in a manageable area. Speaking of moving on grass, you can see our grass. Look at this. Like, this is what we're dealing with this year. When we hit this heat wave, we've had no rain. We've had, you know, we had a little bit of rain earlier in the year, but for, you know, largely we've had next to nothing. We're in near drought conditions. Our creek that actually divides the property here from northwest to southeast, kind of comes kitty corner across the whole farm, is dried up completely. And it usually has a trickle all summer. And so things like, we got one pie-shaped piece and then there's another pen off of there where the rams are. We can usually rely on that all winter long, or all summer long, sorry, to supply water to the animals that are in those little paddocks. And that's not the case. We were actually having to use, we got a trailer, like a 300-gallon trailer on the, with a water tank, and we're having to haul that down there every few days, or once a week probably about, to add water for the rams down there. And you know, you look at the grass, and this is our yard side, this is the farm, this is the house, right? Probably the best maintained because it's, you know, on the aesthetic side, and there's just no grass recovery at all. There's none. So as the chickens eat it, or you know, the horses we've let them out to graze a little bit, they've munched it down, and there's just been zero recovery because there's just no moisture in the soil. Now, what can we do about that? Can we run sprinklers? Yes, we have a fantastic water well, but yeah, no, we can't. We can't run sprinklers and water the whole yard site. Certainly not sustainable at all. That would be detrimental to both the well, our power bill, and probably would be a short-lived success. It's just not a sustainable thing. So we are praying for rain, absolutely. Now, you know, rain is one of those things where you talk to a farmer, you're never going to find a good time for the rain, because you're usually trying to seed, or you're trying to hay, or you're trying to harvest, or you're doing one of those things, and the rain is just going to come when it's going to come. And we're at that point now where we don't care when it comes. Just please just come, right? So because we need this stuff to not be brown and threadbare. We want it to be green and lush, and the soil health to be rejuvenated. And yeah, we're going to be in a tight spot for feed this winter for sure. So where we're not going to be in a tight spot for feed is potatoes. Yes, the potatoes are absolutely jamming. There's a few of them that are just starting to blossom. I've seen some of the stuff on the west side. Seen some blossoms the other day. So because we have been watering these, you know, once a week, we give them a really good bath, and they're doing really fantastic. Actually, I got to get in there and do some more weeding, because you know, stinkweed's kind of persistent in this area. Well, definitely right in that area, and we can't eat that. Well, we probably could, but it's not really appetizing to me. But you know, the challenge with this is, even if we have too many potatoes for us to eat, we can't really feed a whole bunch of them to the potatoes or to the pigs. You can't really feed a whole bunch of them to the chickens, because it's not intended. You know, you can feed cooked potatoes to pigs, but it's like 5% of their diet that can be starch, because they just can't process the starch, right? As well, and you know, and people would feed the junky potatoes typically. You know, the ones I don't want to eat, I'll just feed them to the pigs. But what are the ones we don't want to eat? They're usually the ones with the green knobs on them. They've, you know, the potatoes crept out of the dirt a little bit and got a little bit of sun on it. It's gone green. It's gone bitter. Thing is that contains solanine, right? Solanine is something that's toxic to humans, toxic to pigs, toxic to chickens. And so if you need to throw that potato away, you need to throw that potato away, and don't just feed it to the pigs. Now, if you happen to throw some potato peels in there, or you know, 1 or 2 potatoes that had a little bit of green on them, it's not going to kill the pigs. But if you know, again, everything in moderation, right? If you fed them a lot, it would be detrimental to them. Anyways, on that note, I think it's time to fix up some breakfast and then head off to work. So I hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll see you tomorrow.